Hello old-timers and newcomers, I am Core Scratches and thank you for joining me to take another look at what I found. Halloween?
Rotting sweet candies and twig-brittle teeth, clawing veins and crinkling leaves. Trouble, trouble, rumble and rubble, charnel winds and toiling hubble, latex gore and tight-knit girdles, red-dyed glucose and egg bomb hurdles, shifting fires, lit-up figures, pot and coke and death-toll figures, twitching limbs and empty sockets, dried-up carcass and graveyard riggers, swing your hips and shuffle with sass, flow your robes and swing thy ass, curve thy gourd, slash thy lean, revel unbound, dance comprehend. Leave thy home, come be seen, come out, it's Halloween.
There's nothing to do around here and I don't have any friends.
I take offense to that.
But with the grievous returnal equinox upon us, don't quote me on that, the best way to celebrate is with a good old-fashioned ghost movie marathon. All month long, all the time. Or once every other Sunday. I just keep spouting lies, I don't know why, but I'm very excited about it because for the moment, ghost movies are my favorite type of horror.
Growing up I was very interested in the paranormal, but full disclosure, I haven't put any serious effort into it for some decade and a half? Fuck, I'm getting old. But last I checked there were 3 major theories surrounding ghosts. One is parapsychology, the other is spiritualism, and the third... I don't know what it's called. But it was quantum mechanical, and I know the least about that one. The point I'm making is, once I figured out ghosts, they lost their appeal to me. But with age comes wisdom, and I have started appreciating them again. Just like an actor portraying a character, it doesn't matter whether it's all fiction. What matters is the sense of magic and wonder that they create in you and allow you to experience just for a moment through them. It also helps that I'm a morbid son of a bitch, and playing with dead things is fun.
What is the measure of sanity? A firm connection to reality? What does that mean when a shared point of view has become a rarity? Then, is it an atom? Unchangeability? Terra firma? We have changed the world to suit our needs since time immemorial, and every supposed lasting truth has been dismantled and remodeled, torn down and desecrated, questioned and re-evaluated. What does that say of sanity? It says the only true measure of sanity is how well you fit reality, and what is sane today may be insane tomorrow, and the only thing keeping you from a padded cell is how willing you are to accept it when the lunatics run the asylum. In the early 2000s, the young Lance Preston approached a small production company with the hope of airing his reality TV show Grave Encounters. Him and his team of experts would stay in a supposedly haunted location with the hope of capturing genuine evidence of the paranormal, and for a while, it was all going well. As they set out to film episode 6, the crew vanished, never to be seen again. The only trace of them was the footage delivered to the production company, now assembled and distributed, to make for one of the most revered cult movies in the found footage community.
By which I mean, no, the footage isn't real, but a lot of people love this film. Which usually spells disaster for me. But hold your horses. Please. I worked really hard and I need validation.
The film opens to Jerry Hartfeld, played by Ben Wilkinson. He would have been the executive for the show had it ever premiered, but with the events of episode 6 coming to light, nothing ever came of it. And the first thing we learn about him is he's full of shit.
And this was, years before all the other ghost hunting shows that are out there now.
Paranormal investigation shows have been a thing since the 50s. And this specific format with devoted experts was heralded by Most Haunted in 2002, before it was ripped off by Ghost Hunters in 2004. They never actually say when all of this is supposed to be taking place, but I think this says 2003.
This has been assembled from some 76 plus hours of raw mini DV source footage.
You might wonder how the footage got back to him if the crew all vanished. Sequel says, what I want to know is, how did 76 hours worth of footage fit on one cassette? I mean, yeah, they have several cameras, but you never see them change cassettes in any of them.
Anyway, Grave Encounters, the show within the movie, was the brainchild of Lance Preston, played by Sean Rogerson. He is the stereotype MTV-esque show host who holds the show together entirely from his charisma. But he isn't just a cardboard flat showboat, that is the character his character plays within the show on the film. There is a legitimate person beneath the taglines and muscle shirt, which makes what could be a pretty annoying character fairly likable.
Or at the very least, you don't want to punch him in the face. Yet.
My name is Lance Preston. When I was a boy, my family moved into a house that I soon discovered was haunted. The things I encountered have stayed with me forever.
But I may be wrong.
The format of the show is familiar for a reason. The movie was made by a creative duo called the Vicious Brothers, consisting of Colin Minihan and Stuart Ortiz. And they asked themselves, why has no one made a found footage film out of these ghost hunting shows? And it was a good question. With people literally looking for ghosts, it seems weird not one horror movie had been made of it. So the show within the movie is supposed to work as both a parody and a tribute to other similar shows. For example, Lance Preston is inspired by the Ghost Adventures show host Zach Bagans, and the short promo opening reminds me of the Discovery Channel anthology series A Haunting. That gives the show less of an identity than it might have had, but it doesn't matter because the only broadcast-ready taste we get of the show is this short 30-second opening. From here on, the movie transitions entirely to raw found footage, unedited and uninterrupted, just raw, recorded in the moment source video that have yet to go through post-production. According to Hartfeld, the only editing is for time, condensing all the dozens of hours into its relevant parts, and to that end, I think the Vicious Brothers did a good job. There are a number of slow moments in the film, but it always leads up to something, so it never feels like padding. It works for a feature film pretending it's real. However, that may also break suspension of disbelief, because if this footage is supposed to be real, why aren't there experts examining it? Why aren't there interviews with the bereaved? Why just release it as a rough cut that spends half an hour not getting to the point?
What I'm saying is, on a meta level, the film is obviously fake. But for a feature film pretending it's real, you could do a lot worse. And speaking of getting to the point, I've been talking for 5 minutes about the first 2 minutes of the film. Can you tell I'm excited?
The movie proper begins with Prescott introducing the audience to the Collingwood Psychiatric Hospital, a character unto itself that I can barely wait to talk about, but it's not me interrupting the movie this time. It's a passing car that forces them to turn off the camera and try again, because remember, the film is actually what happens behind the scenes.
Now, between the years 1895 and 1960, it played home to more than 80,000 of Maryland's most mentally ill and disturbed individuals.
If that building looks familiar, that's because it's the Riverview Hospital in British Columbia. It is the go-to asylum for Hollywood. Deadpool 2 was filmed there. Butterfly Effect was filmed there. Watchmen was filmed there. Prison Break was filmed there. Supernatural was filmed there. It feels familiar because it is familiar, and I kinda like that. I mean, yeah, it's another nail in the coffin for realism, but I don't know, it's like seeing a childhood friend. It just makes me feel all warm and cozy.
Not to mention, it plays into the duplicitous nature of reality television, found footage, and film in general. And I think Grave Encounters uses the building in a way that a lot of other movies doesn't, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All I'll say is it feels uniquely enormous. Prescott goes on about how it's 6 buildings, all connected via underground tunnels spread over 80 acres of land, but just looking up at the 4 stories worth of brick and mortar looming over him in the background gives such an immensity to the place. It's imposing before we even get to the backstory. And for it to be a found footage movie that does this, the so-called default of no-budget horror cinema, is awesome.
I'll try to stop interrupting the movie now.
The history of Collingwood is what you would expect from an abandoned asylum. Built in response to overcrowding, it didn't take long before the walls billowed with the madness that historically marred these institutions meant to alleviate pain and misery. The abuse dressed up as care that only twisted patients further into madness. The lack of amenities or even linens to sleep, the head physician with a penchant for lobotomies, all the harrowing pieces of an all-too-common apologue are there to create a suitably cheesy but interesting tale for some half an hour of late-night soap.
It was about a 6-hour drive, something like that. Oh, death awaits. I guess we'll find out.
That is so lame.
The Vicious Brothers are remarkably honest to the spirit of reality television. Prescott plays up the melodrama, builds hens out of feathers, and when reality becomes kind of dull, a few fibs here and there never hurt anyone. No one would want to watch a ghost hunting show where they don't find any ghosts, so they perpetuate the occasional scam to keep the show going. By which I mean not a single one of the 5 episodes they've made have had anything supernatural happen. Not even the psychic they drag along for the occasion is genuine.
There's water. Red. Red water. Blood.
Cut it. Yeah. That was great.
Okay, was that too much?
No.
Come on.
Just as Prescott is based on Zach Bagans, Houston is based on several psychics from Paranormal State. Don't know whether they should be flattered or insulted.
The thing about it is, it would have been easy to have Prescott be this cynical jackass who makes fun of the audience he caters to behind the camera, but the Vicious Brothers never go there. If the hospital is anything to go by, the crew always attempts to really capture something on video, but they're pragmatic enough to come up with something spooky looking if they don't find anything real. I can respect that, and as a whole the group never does anything bad enough to warrant death by horror movie standards. No one's whoring, no one's chatting, no one's racist, no one's selfish. It's actually a breath of fresh air to find a cast of characters that I don't immediately want to see die.
Take notes, film directors!
One by one, the cameras are turned on and left to run through the night by the Grave Encounters roadie, Matt, played by Juan Riedinger. And at this point we find out all the footage is wirelessly transmitted back to an external hard drive, which means the mini-DV angle is entirely pointless and contradictory, but nitpicks. It's time to hype up the audience.
I want to put emphasis on the fact that this facility was built very much like a prison.
And they lock the doors. Genuinely. It's not something they say to hype up the audience. Prescott literally had the caretaker lock them inside.
Also, this is Sasha, played by Ashley Grisco. She exists specifically to hold the camera. Officially, she is the team's occult expert, but she offers all of no esoteric knowledge for the entire film. All she does is assist Matt and TC with their equipment. TC is the main camera guy, played by Merwin Mondesir. You'd think that would necessarily put him in the background, but no. He's actually on camera more than Sasha. Did the brothers get confused about who played who?
On that note, in reality, it's neither Ashley nor Merwin behind the camera. It's actually the Vicious Brothers themselves who does most of the camera work. They went on record as saying, when working with something as detail-oriented as found footage, they didn't dare trust anyone else to do it. Good on them for respecting the genre.
All right, everyone, if you're ready, it's time to have some grave encounters.
God, that was cheesy. But that is the show. The hours roll by as the crew make their rounds through the desolate corridors, and yet again the ghosts shine with their absence. EVP sessions go unanswered, the halls remain quiet, and the only movement caught is that of rats scurrying through the underground.
This place about as haunted as a sock drawer.
So party! Honestly, this is how I imagine most ghost explorations going. The experts film for a bit and then they have a snack in a free hotel room. But unbeknownst to them all, as midnight approaches and the dead hour strikes, the deceased begins to stir.
Fun fact, several scares in this film were inspired by real experiences that film crews told about their experience working at Riverview. I find a certain irony about the Vicious Brothers setting out to make a horror movie about a reality TV crew that comes across a real haunting that upstages every real haunting ever.
Having caught nothing, the crew sets about preparing the fake haunting for the episode, and send TC out to capture some B-roll footage they can add some orbs to in post. However, that may not be necessary. As the crew is busy placing luminous gum on the walls and calling it ectoplasm, TC captures more than he intends. He comes across an abandoned wheelchair in the hall, only to set his camera down when his wife calls him, and unintentionally films it moving. But when that doesn't get his attention...
What the fuck was that? Guys, cut this shit! I'm not fucking playing!
Hand on heart, none of them were anywhere near TC when that door slammed, and after many assurances he accepts their apology for accusing him of making things up after he shows them the video. This of course lights a fire under Prescott to try an actual investigation again, and where before the ghosts stoically ignored their invocations, now they remain mockingly absent just long enough to make Prescott feel like a fool, before a thunderous crack echoes through the hallways. In a room not too far away, they find a gurney tipped over, wheels still spinning from the force that threw it. From above, another rumble, and Prescott checks in with Matt to ask, is he or anyone on the 4th floor? No, he says, they're supposed to be alone. Riding high on the adrenaline and uncertainty about what's unfolding around them, tempers flare as no one really knows what to do. Prescott may have been the most eager to investigate, but Ashley is the first to suggest that maybe this is something real. For lack of anything else, she brings out the tape recorder and asks the air around them who is there. What do they want? Where are they?
Rude, but forthcoming.
This is the first time anything remotely paranormal has ever happened to any one of the Grave Encounters team, and it shows. Mackenzie struggles to wrap his head around what even happened. CT is screaming and Sasha is on the verge of a panic attack from the minute gesture the unknown molester showed her. But Prescott will not let this opportunity wane. 5 episodes in, they finally find something real, something none of them set up, and they are not going to let it pass. He makes Mackenzie escort Sasha back downstairs to Matt, and then get his ass back to see if they can catch anything else on screen.
To the spirit who dwells in this hallway, we implore you.
I would make jokes, but honestly this movie does that for me.
Again, the spirits ignore the pleas and frustrated demands Prescott throws at them. But that doesn't mean they're not present. They're not his puppies to come when he calls, and he is going to learn.
At this point I would like to talk about how the Vicious Brothers directed this film.
There is an underlying sense of paranoia about the film that doesn't just stem from flickering lights and empty halls. If you pay attention to the background, every now and again you'll catch a glimpse of something moving or looking at the characters in the distance, but the characters never notice and the film never points it out. I really like that because partly it's a little Easter egg for the viewers to find, and partly it makes an already unnerving scene even creepier. Unless I just ruined the magic for you by pointing out the trick. Sorry about that. Prescott, TC and Mackenzie make their way back to the foyer that became their base of operations, but not without issue. All of a sudden they find themselves unsure of what corridor leads back to the foyer, and when they tried hailing Matt, they couldn't reach him. They almost fall out over it, but eventually they find their way back. It's dark, they're tired, they're hopped up on adrenaline, it's not strange for them to feel a little bit confused. But now all they need to do is wait for the caretaker to come and let them out. Except for Matt, who goes to pick up the static cameras and promptly vanishes.
Sasha was the disposable one, Matt was a genuine character, and that's how you build a threat.
It's enough to make me ignore how the hard-coded timestamp doesn't jump between jump cuts. Or how they decide to Scooby-Doo it and split up to look for Matt.
You better be dead or dying, bro.
That's a fair trade.
Matt?
Not sure about the collateral.
He got pushed! As he was looking for Matt, something shoved him down the stairs and damn near broke his neck. He ain't waiting around no more. He is getting out of here. The caretaker is, what, an hour late? TC don't care anymore. He is getting out. So he grabs a gurney from one of the halls, and with Lance's help, they ram the door open. At the second try, the chains give way and the doors burst open. And they stay still, staring into the darkness. What the fuck? TC asks aloud, and then states over and over again that they're in the lobby. They're in the lobby. They're in the lobby. This can't be right, Sasha whispers, as Lance tries to make sense of it. Could they have somehow been turned around? Isn't this where they came in from? Didn't they put all the stuff in the... Yes, they did! It's not possible! In disbelief, Mackenzie picks up the broken chains from the hallway floor, and Matt picks up the camera to stare down the hospital corridor where the outside should be, before he turns around to look again.
Lance?
Are those the same doors?
No, it's the other doors with death awaits written on them. Of course it's the same doors!
This is the first clue what they're dealing with may be slightly worse than your average creaky floorboards and cold spots haunting. Panic rises between them as they move down the hall until they find an emergency exit, kick it open, only for it to be another corridor. CT tries the barred windows only for them to shrug him off like a tennis ball when Lance has a realization. What time is it? He asks, and the calm breaks when Sasha tells him it's 8:44, and Mackenzie and TC screams about wherever else they need to be. They almost tear each other's throats out in the panic they feel before Lance manages to calm them down. He didn't bring it up because time's a wasting, it's because he checked the sunrise times yesterday.
What's your fucking point?
It should have been bright by 7:45. It's still night out.
Yeah, it's that kind of haunting.
I got no problems with this at all. I love when movies do this Silent Hill congruent reality thing, and it comes out of flipping nowhere. Nothing about the film suggested this is where it was going, and it was such a slow build-up for such a simple but harrowing reveal. Yes, this is how it's done! True to form, all their attempts at finding an exit are in vain, as the bars refuses to break and the windows are too high to jump. They even scream in desperation for anyone outside to hear them. But it's no use. For all intents and purposes, no matter how little sense it makes, they are trapped in the hospital. So for lack of a more sensible plan, they return to the foyer to get some sleep and wait for the caretaker to come get them. The timestamp ticks away from 14 hours to 20, and that's all the reprieve they get. All at once they're shook awake by the spotlight crashing to the ground, sinking them into darkness aside from the on-camera flashlights. They tried for something to eat, but find all of the food they brought with them have rotted, and all that's left are the bottles of water to keep them going. Rested but hungry, and hopelessness increasing by the minute, they force themselves not to panic. TC suggests trying the roof, as he remembered seeing a fire escape earlier. They may as well, and it actually seems to work. The corridors are as confusing as before, but they find the stairwell, and they find the rooftop access, with TC leading the charge up towards freedom. And this is when hope leaves them entirely, when they turn the corner, and the stair inexplicably ends in a solid wall.
Let's get the fucking camera on my face!
Is it even a found footage movie if someone doesn't say that?
They find a floor plan and try to find an exit. I mean, it's a floor plan. It shows the way. But it doesn't make sense. It says you are here, but they can't be at the place where it says, because they walked in the opposite direction and the foyer would be somewhere else. And Mackenzie realizes somehow they're on the opposite side of the building, on the first floor. That's not possible. They went up 4 flights of stairs. It doesn't make sense. In a desperate bid for something to work as it should, Sasha takes out a compass. The needle flits from one direction to the next, unwilling or unable to stick to a magnetic north, or maybe it does and the room is spinning around them. And in the distance they can hear screaming. It could be Matt for all they know, and before they can think, they run to find him, only to find the room empty. Save for a bed that rattles the entire room as it shifts, before it's thrown into the air, and the building rattles with monstrous roars and chilling wails of agony, sending them running for their lives. What happens between then and now is uncertain. Maybe Lance turned the camera off, or maybe it was cut for time. But when the camera comes back, we find the crew in a storage room. Tired, frightened, starving. Lance addresses the camera and summarizes what's happened. For the past day, they wandered the same floor looking for a stairwell but couldn't find one. For better and worse, they're beginning to come to grips with how the building works. It seems to be shifting all around them, but only when they're not paying attention. Like it's toying with them. Gaslighting them. They've decided to sleep in shifts, so someone can always keep watch. The camera cuts to Lance approaching the shivering wreck that is Sasha. She begs him not to show, but he does anyway, for reasons that only make sense to him. Some sort of last desperate grip on sanity, the process of documenting their experience, the hope that they will live to show the world what happened. But as she slept, something carved the word hello into her back. He hasn't completely lost his humanity though. When TC starts talking about how nothing like this has ever been documented before, turning her pain into a science experiment or nighttime television fodder, that's when Lance tells him to turn the camera off. They turn it back on in time to catch Lance trying to reach Matt on the walkie-talkie again, and actually gets a response.
You would think with them having understood that the ghosts are malevolent, crazy, and prone to shits and giggles, they would not be so keen to follow such an obvious lore.
Mag? What?
You're in here.
It was a trap, who the funk?
Fun fact, along with most of the camera work, all of the digital effects, from the camera glitches to the CGI, was done by the Vicious Brothers themselves. It's almost painterly how concerned they were for the film to look right.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that though. I am a traditionalist when it comes to ghosts. I like the idea of ghosts not being quite part of the material world, and therefore, generally, I prefer CGI ghosts, but that was the most we see of it in this entire film. Everything else is down to practical effects. Mostly. And I don't mind it in this case, partly because it's not that kind of haunting. It's not an immaterial force affecting physical objects, it's the real world changing because of the haunting, and that just throws out the rulebook. And secondly, I'm just fascinated by how well the Vicious Brothers keeps pushing what is and isn't possible for the characters to run into without having to rely on the same scare twice. It's like, the feeling I get is you don't know what's around the next corner, but you do know whatever it is, it will be worse than what they just escaped from.
In the panic, Houston loses his way from the group and finds himself wandering the pitch-black halls, terrified at every sound, before an invisible power lifts him into the air by the neck and then drop kicks him across the floor.
That was unexpectedly silly. Let's go back to the others, see if something scary is happening over there.
For hours they hide in an empty pantry as the asylum wakes further around them. It's hard to say what's even happening, but they're not alone anymore. In a moment of weakness, CT falls asleep, and when they wake up, they find their wrists burdened by flimsy white patient IDs. They've been tagged like animals, made the property of the asylum now. They leave the pantry to find all of the cell doors open. The patients have escaped their rooms, and those that haven't are breaking out. They run till they can't find it in them to run anymore, and that's when they find him. Matt, dressed in a hospital gown, tagged and deliriously whispering psychological jargon, but alive. They ask him, is he okay? What happened to him? How did he get into his clothes? Where has he been? Does he know if there's a way out? And he laughs. He laughs to their faces. He laughs gleefully like a child. Of course there's a way out, he whimpers, before he grows quiet and serious. But you need to get better first.
Wait. Inmates run the asylum, corrupt authority figure, convinced they're crazy but can leave when they want. It's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest! How did that end again?
How do you think it will end? The group does their best to comfort each other in the mad darkness before the room comes alive with disembodied hands chasing them out. They hope for shelter in a dilapidated bathroom they cross through in the daylight, only to find one of the tubs is filled to the brim with blood. In a moment of lapsed attention, Matt approaches the tub, and when he tries to fetch him, a bloodied woman explodes from the tub to drag CT down with her. Sasha and Lance tries to save him by flipping the tub over, but he's gone. Just vanished. And mad laughter echoes through the room as Matt mirthfully bellows his amusement. The hospital is now truly awake and bustling with the lost souls that once wandered its halls. In their desperate need for escape, they find an elevator that would be something other than here. But the door is stuck. Lance goes to find a lever to try and pry the door open, and he does, but he also finds himself chased down by yet another patient. He finds the way back to Sasha and Matt, and quickly Matt and Sasha become so distracted trying to keep the creature behind closed doors, they don't see what Matt does in his fugue state. He picks up one of the cameras to film them, and then himself as they try to stay alive. Would it even matter anymore if they do? It's the one reasonable choice left. So he waddles over to the elevator, takes a last glimpse at his friends, and falls. Almost immediately the patient vanishes, its part played in the sick little game, as the building now lets the duo discover they are all that's left. Aside from a resonant drone, the presence of the building recedes as they descend and make their way through the tunnels as Lance keeps pushing Sasha to keep going. All of the buildings are connected to each other, they just have to make it there and then they can find a way out. Empty words, he knows, but they cling to hope in hopelessness. They wander till they know they should have passed a junction, they wander further still, but the tunnel just keeps going. It's too much for Sasha as she falls down and starts spitting blood. It just won't end, there is no way out. But still, Lance keeps her going, until of all things, they find one of the cameras Matt set up before. It's as good a place as any to rest. Matt stays awake while Sasha sleeps. They wandered all day. He doesn't even know what day it is anymore. And he doesn't think they're going to make it out. He doesn't think they're going to make it. And he falls asleep. And as he does, the darkness comes alive around him, billowing like a cloud. It closes in around them and hides them from the camera's view.
Now, who do you think disappears? The blameless victim who has done nothing but suffer for the entire film? Or the single-minded MTV host who is entirely responsible for all of it?
Sasha? Sasha! Sasha! Where are you? Where are you?
Because fuck your sense of justice.
Little by little, the layers of his sanity are being peeled away until there is nothing left for him to rely on anymore. Left alone Wandering in the dark for hours on end, he finally begins to sleep. Kind of like a game. How far can you go? And he has a message for anyone who might be watching this.
Fuck you. Fuck you guys! This was for you.
This is not Cannibal Holocaust. You do not get to blame the audience.
It's how mental health works, isn't it? How far can you go until you're willing to change? How small does your world need to be? How dehumanized must we make you? All that's left is what the light shows and what the camera records, and soon enough not even that. When Lance wakes up to find a door, not even the light can shine on what's inside. So he switches to night vision and journeys inside.
And, yeah. This bit.
I wouldn't say it ruins the movie, but it just feels underwhelming after the massive build-up that was the first hour and a half. At first it looks on point. Lance finds himself in a laboratory that seems to be prepped for a lobotomy, which only makes sense when you remember how, at the beginning of the film, we were introduced to Dr. Arthur Friedkin. He was a passionate advocate for the procedure until 6 patients cornered and killed him. With the amount of build-up he got, you knew he was going to make an appearance eventually. There's also several photographs that show the crew being autopsied, and all in all it's a pretty unnerving moment.
Until this bit.
Jesus Christ. What is all that?
Friedkin wasn't just a lobotomizing bastard, he was a black magic using lobotomizing bastard, and all of this is caused by fucking black magic. Brothers? What possessed you to think that was a good creative choice?
Also, fun fact, the runes in the black magic book he finds are just a repetition of a corruption of a poem called I Have Learned, which I could not find the author for. It goes, steamy a relationship is at first, the passion fades and there had better be a lot of money to take its place. I have learned that sometimes the people you expect to kick you when you're down will be the ones who do. I've learned that we don't ditch friends because of their dysfunction. They are more fucked up than you think. Okay. Then Lance turns around, he sees Friedkin about to lobotomize a patient, and he is quickly made to take the patient's place. He screams, he begs, he pleads, he's not crazy, he's not crazy! And then they jam a nail into his head.
He said I'm all better now. You can finally go home.
How's that for poetic justice? Ugh. But what a way to start Halloween.
This is one of my favorite ghost movies. In fact, I think it's one of my favorite movies in general. It's larger than life and avoids becoming silly at the expense of the horror, as while it may go so far it breaks suspension of disbelief, it's dead serious about it, and it truly captures the feeling of slowly dwindling hope as the characters find themselves at the mercy of an ill will that is not confined to the reality they know. It starts very slow and doesn't do much to grip the audience in the first half an hour, but that's only a ruse to make the eventual madness all the more shocking. Things do not work the way they should, and every time the characters attempt to find a red thread of logic to the place that would let them escape, it's like gripping smoke with their hands. From beginning to end, the movie is an escalation where every happening is more horrible than what came before. It starts simple with the opening windows, goes on to physical violence, ramps it up by bending space and time before physical manifestations chase the characters through the halls, slowly driving them further into an insanity so encompassing you're not even sure if anything is real anymore. It feels like a bucket of horror slowly being poured over you until it becomes a flood. I often like to compare the films I watch to Lovecraft. and while the elements certainly are there, this film is way too on the nose with the madness analogy. If ghosts are the mind imprinting on reality, or tragedy leaves traces that transcends the physical, then there is a twisted logic to an insane asylum haunted by the patients twisting and turning without reason. The film doesn't go all the way and become a panicked vertigo of tentacles, but stays in this restrained intersection between real and impossible, where reality is a local phenomenon and outside your peripheral logic stops, while the ghosts occasionally plays mean pranks on you. Which would be both the strength and weakness of the film. There is no reason to what the ghosts do or why they do it. They just pull random shit on occasion for what appears to be entertainment, and it's left intentionally vague because it's not meant to make sense. It's meant to be insane. That is until the end, and the Vicious Brothers just threw in this black magic bullshit as a hint there may be a method to the madness that I think only harms what 95% of the film was trying to achieve. I think maybe they wanted some kind of explanation of why this specific haunted house was so much more active than the average, but it also devalues everything that happened unto this point for there to be a reason. I don't know, I just think it makes the film that much less frightening. Because it is a thrilling experience, it really is. It didn't leave me unable to sleep, but when it slowly transitions from a very slow and dull shaky cam drama to the most extreme haunting in history, it held my interest right to the end, wondering what would happen next and how the characters would deal with it. They're not the best actors I've ever seen and not particularly interesting characters, but the way they reacted to the increasing horror and implicit threat of becoming patients in the asylum at the hands of ill wills they don't understand was a joy to be made a part of. So then, it's a perfect 11 out of 11 horror film that will make any aspiring auteur give up on their dreams, unable to top it? Oh hell no, there are plenty of warts and surgery scars to drag it down. I'm just saying all of this is why I really like it. For one, the actors do a good job most of the time, especially considering a lot of the lines were ad-libbed, but there are many scenes in the film where I wonder why they didn't do a few more takes, because I'm sure their deliveries could have been improved. The film is also occasionally inconsistent when it's clearly not meant to be, and you don't need to be a critic to notice the sometimes rough editing and post-production. Finally, while overall the brothers did a good job of making the film imaginative without becoming silly, there are a few things that drag it down as well, like when the ghost drop-kicked Houston, or the black magic altar in the basement. Yeah, seriously, I am not letting that go. Grave Encounters is a good film. It's a fantastical exploration of everything found footage can be, when a director is allowed to do more than just try to do the Blair Witch Project again. Without becoming pretentious, it doesn't stray too far into fantasy, but makes up for it by asserting the horror of the situation the characters are in. There are weaknesses that keeps it from becoming a truly faultless film, but it left me plenty entertained to say Grave Encounters deserves a solid 8 on a scale of 11. It also helps that this movie reminds a lot of Poltergeist, which is one of my favorite movies. It's not quite as over-the-top 80s as Poltergeist, but it was reaching, and by tradition, sequels generally try to one-up what came before. Should make things interesting. Thank you all for watching. I have been Cole Scratches, and I hope you will see me again next time to take another look at what I found. Hello old-timers and newcomers, Cole Scratches here, and I just wanted to take a bit of time to explain why this video is so late. I know I said I was gonna stop doing these, but it's the end of the video, why not? See, last week I spent as much time as possible preparing to finally, for the third and final time, get my driver's license. Good news, I got it, and I finally have something to back up the claim that I am indeed an adult. Yeah, I love you, but you're not helping. Now if only I could find a job as well, that'd be everything that I need. But yeah,
that is why this video is late. All the time that I usually put into editing now went into preparing for the driver's test, and that is why this video is late. Hopefully this will be the last time for a while this happens, because this tends to be practicing for driving. It tends to be what takes up most of my time, so no promises, but hopefully this will be the last late video for a while now. I really appreciate your support, and I hope you will stick around for next time I have something that I found.